welcome back to Veil of Sound. And you might be surprised that this is an interview on a not regular Sunday. Yes, we have something very special, something that is very, very close to my heart. Because I was given the chance to watch a movie that I always like, which I always like. And then, second of all, we are going to talk about a documentary about a band that whoever listened to them back in the day will remember them. So I'm very, very happy to have Chris Enriquez here, who was the last drummer in On the Might of Princess. So Chris, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you so much, because I swear, man, like you are always really supportive of all my bands, and this is really nice to be here doing this. It means the world to me because, you know, you're in Germany, I'm in New York. You know, I don't take that lightly when people across the sea are recognizing anything that I've done. So thank you very much.
First question here on Veil of Sound is always, I mean, everybody can see it, but let's just explain it. Shirt of the day for you.
Shirt of the day?
Yes, always. That's always a first question here.
Bad Brains, my favorite band, and you know, I even have this here. Ooh. So I kind of really go out of my way to sport Bad Brains in any way possible. Yeah, I would have to go with Bad Brains. Any Bad Brains t-shirt. Best band, best t-shirts.
Well, we could discuss the best bad thing and the best t-shirts, but definitely very, very high on the list. And as we're talking about hardcore today, I also got some hardcore related stuff. Refused. One of the bands that I think changed hardcore, just like the Bad Brains did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to start with a compliment, also in a way, something that On the Might of Princess did. What I like about the documentary that you are screening 28th, right? September 28th?
Yes, Nighthawk Cinema in Brooklyn, New York on the 28th of September.
What I like about On the Might of Princess, or what I also figured out only consciously when watching the documentary, how ahead of some of the bands from Long Island you've been. Whenever somebody asks a lot of people for like Long Island hardcore, I bet in 8 out of 10 cases, the first answer is always Taking Back Sunday. Which is cool.
Sure, yeah.
Good band, good songs, especially the first 1 or 2 albums are fantastic, but they came long after On the Might of Princess. How does it feel for you that you were in a band that by now has gathered a certain kind of cult following among people who were there?
It feels very peculiar in the sense that I don't think that I envisioned this style of music having some kind of resurgence. I definitely couldn't believe when I started to notice bands like On the Might of Princess, for example, a band like Saetia, who are also from New York, and around the same time, I think we might have started at the same time, 1997. You know, I just watched them play a whole bunch of shows, and I really couldn't believe how many people are listening to the stuff that was happening back then. I mean, it makes sense to me now, but initially I just never really envisioned that happening. So for me, for On the Might of Princess, it feels great because you know, we definitely poured our heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears, what have you. Like, I mean, in the movie, when people see it, and you can kind of get a small sense of what we went through in that time, and the music that we made was some of the most honest music that I've ever experienced. You know, so anybody 20 plus years later that still wants to hear it or talk about it, it means the world to me, and I know it means a lot to my bandmates as well.
When we talk about bandmates, we of course have to talk about Jason Rosenthal. I don't want to go too far into the circumstances of his death because I want people to watch the documentary. But do you think that On the Might of Princess would have had a chance of getting maybe a little bigger, even 2012, 2011, when you were doing reunion shows. Do you think there would have been a chance of you becoming a little bit bigger and a little bit more known?
I think that we would have definitely become bigger and more well known. There was definitely an indication of that in 2012 when we played our final shows together, because up until that point, we had never played. We played Irving Plaza, which in New York is like a institution. We grew up going there. This place is like a spot that everyone from Bad Brains to the Misfits, you name it, have played. So, our second to last show was at Irving Plaza, opening for Texas Is the Reason. And then we did a headline gig at St. Vitus, the venue in Brooklyn, not the band, also a great band though. And it was sold out. So it was really like, wow. Like, I think, and we were going to start writing new music. So we were actually throwing some riffs around. We tried, but we just were not there mentally to get back into it. But to answer your question, these upcoming shows that are all, this show that we have coming up with our new singer next week is going to be the biggest show that we have ever played ever, including when Jason was around as a headliner. So it's definitely like very clear that the band's impact is still relevant. And I am sure if Jason was alive, and if we were writing music, without a doubt, we would be more recognized. But I don't know what that means in terms of like, a lot of the bands that we played with that, went on to achieve mainstream success. I don't know that we were the band that would have achieved that, because we didn't write songs that really made sense for radio or anything like that. But I think on a comparable sort of way, maybe like, a lot of bands that we loved and respected, like Cursive was a band that or Sunny Day Real Estate or something like that. I mean, those bands are legendary to us, and I don't know that we would have been on their level, but I think that they're great examples of bands that were doing something very cool and something that we felt a kinship to, who are still playing huge shows, but not necessarily on the radio or on. So that's my answer, I guess.
You've mentioned some like really famous bands like Texas Reason, Sunny Day Real Estate, and you've said that you felt akin to them. Has there been ever any kind of influence from those bands On the Might of Princess?
Absolutely. Sunny Day Real Estate was a major influence on us, as they were on, I think, every single band that was sort of dabbling in what is now sort of widely regarded as emo at that time. That's sort of pretty obvious if you were to ask anybody, I think, from the Crank records, sort of for those of people that are in their late 30s or 40s or above. There was Jade Tree Records and Crank Records and Saddle Creek, and a lot of those bands in the earlier years, I think, were definitely a byproduct of Sunny Day Real Estate. And I think that every member of On the Might of Princess would agree that certainly in the beginning stages of what we were doing, that was a huge part of the sound. We evolved and kind of found our own sound and influences from other bands from the time that we had started to the time that we had ended. But Sunny Day Real Estate, absolutely. And Texas the Reason, for me, I think more so than the other guys, was a big influence, because I'm from, I was really into New York City post-hardcore and hardcore. So Revelation Records, anything they put out, I bought and I ate it up. And and as I got older too, I have to say, like, I got to become friends with a lot of these guys. So, I actually just had drinks with Jeremy Enoch maybe 2-3 weeks ago. I mean, William, I got to talked to a bunch through doing interviews like this, and now I get to sort of chat with him here and there. So I feel an even deeper kinship to them, knowing that they're just these down to earth guys, and I looked up to them. So it's like this real. It makes you feel even closer to that, knowing this band that had a huge impact on you are so down to earth and people you can just talk to. Like, and that's what we were too. We were just regular human beings. We didn't wear mascara or weird outfits that a lot of the bands that we kind of came up with ended up kind of falling into that whole thing, which that's cool, but it was just not our thing.
What I was just wondering, as I know that you're Filipino, how did mom and dad react when you told them, "Oh, I'm going to be a professional musician and I'm going to play in punk bands"?
I still think it's tough for them, but now that I actually I'm able to make a living between my music related jobs as a person that works at media, and as a drummer, and can take care of myself. I think they finally are understanding of like why I put in so much hard work and how it eventually paid off 25 years later. But they were really supportive. I mean, we wrote most of Where You Are and Where You Want to Be in my parents' basement. So we would write a couple songs and jam or rehearse and come up, and there would be either some Filipino food or a mixture of that and American food waiting for us, in the kitchen. And then we would go back and take a break and eat and go back. So they couldn't have been more supportive. I don't think that I would have been as supportive with all the van accidents and the times we almost died. A lot of crazy stuff they put up with. So thanks for asking that. I appreciate that. Filipino culture is definitely has its nuances and whatnot. And I like to think we're all very caring and supportive people to a fault. So I owe a lot of gratitude towards my parents for putting up with the noise and the life-threatening experiences they had to witness.
Yeah. On the other page, On the Might of Princess was also some kind of like multicultural band, right? I mean, like we had you being a Pinoy. I think Jason is Jewish, right? Rosenthal?
Yes, I believe he was Jewish, and then Tommy and Lou are Italian American.
See, so does that also for you some kind of embody the spirit and the city of New York?
Yeah, actually, that's one of the best questions that anyone's ever asked. Absolutely. New York City has, we have Chinatown, and we have Flushing, Queens, which is predominantly Asian, and then you have one of the biggest Jewish populations, I would say, probably in the world here.
Yes.
And of course, there is we were known for Italian food and Italian Americans. So, I grew up going to my family started in the East Village of Manhattan, and then moved to Long Island, New York, and we had Italian neighbors straight from Italy, and almost everybody that I knew growing up was either Italian or Jewish or Irish American, and so that's kind of just like a large. It's a huge part of being a New Yorker, being exposed to that. But also, I think the culmination of our different backgrounds, which I can get into later. I think there's other ways of delving into that later, but like kind of had a direct impact on the band's sound, because we're all from Long Island, but Jason moved around a lot, and he lived in Chicago at one point, and he lived in Connecticut and in Chicago. I guess I'm getting into it now anyway. In Chicago, he was exposed to things like Cap'n Jazz and a lot of the sort of bands that were adjacent to that world. And
you mean like the Midwest emo thing?
Exactly. He was living in Chicago and immersed in the Midwest emo stuff as it was happening. and he was hanging out at those shows and seeing shows at the Fireside Bowl, which was such a legendary. It was like CBGB's, I think,
Yeah.
in many ways for people during the '90s in Chicago. I'm sure somebody will watch this and disagree with me, but I'm just sort of trying to paint a picture for anybody that may not know the history. And then in Long Island, I was watching bands like Mind Over Matter and Silent Majority, and Tommy and Lou are a little bit older than me and Jason, and um, they were definitely seeing a lot of different types of bands in New York. A lot of like tougher hardcore bands, but then because they were older, they got to see Failure in the original time that they were still active, and Bad Brains, and Jane's Addiction, and I know they were really into like a lot of other like shoegazy, like My Bloody Valentine, and they were seeing that when it was coming to New York. And so the influences that Jason brought and that I brought and that Lou and Tommy were bringing is what makes up our overall sound, in my opinion, because it's hard to label some of our songs. If you listen to one song and it's acoustic, you might not realize that we have these like frantic, screamy songs, and then sort of more pop rock sort of structures for other songs. So we kind of like took a lot of things from different places.
Which I think also in some way explains the appeal that On the Might of Princess had for people all across the country. I mean, in your documentary, you have a lot of people speaking about the band and what it meant and how they got to know you and the band and a lot of things related to it. And it seems as if we have like a widespread community of fans of On the Might of Princess spanning all across the country. And yet at the same time, apart from your Long Island roots, it seems as if it's always been one of those band spans. You know what I mean? Like a band that is popular among other bands, but that is never hitting the headliner spot. Great opening slots, but always a little bit before. Do you think that's also a little bit because of that? Appeal to a lot of people, but not like condensed in one area, so that you could say, okay, like Taking Back Sunday, they were huge in New York, or The Strokes, huge in New York, really big, and then they became this global phenomenon. Whereas On the Might of Princess was like a very American thing all across the country, never ultimately the biggest gig in one city.
It's absolutely true, and there was many reasons for that too. We were not in a mindset when we started this band. So you have for a lot of people that know the bands that you're talking about, what's interesting, and I think sort of is different for us, is like we came from a time frame in Long Island when all of the bands that were playing, and some of them are known very well at this point. I mean, Glassjaw would be one of them. Still a band, still headlining, still doing well. But the other bands that I mentioned, like Silent Majority is another one. To an extent, I would say, well, I'll stop there, but we never talked about professional opportunities ever. It was never talked about, and it was never a goal and I mean that. I mean, it really was never, because no one knew it was a possibility. So back then when we started, none of the bands that we're talking about right now existed or were on huge labels or tours. Victory Records, which we talk about in the movie, when they offered us a record deal, we actually said no, because at that point, when that was offered to us, Thursday wasn't on Victory Records yet, which means that neither was Taking Back Sunday, neither was Bayside. And the only thing we knew about Victory Records at the time was Earth Crisis and Snapcase and Strife. So like we just didn't really understand how that made sense. And that was another part of our history where we were just a little bit before that time frame where it was not obvious to us that you could play a certain type of music and get popular doing it. So we're not. I don't think that we have any regrets as a band collectively because I think I might have been the only one who saw that there was a professional opportunity. Once Coheed and Cambria, who had opened up for us twice, and Brand New opened up for us once, and Take Back Sunday had opened up for us quite a few times, and the list goes on from Autumn to Ashes. Once I started to see that all of these bands were ending up on MTV and on the radio and headlining really huge venues, I think I was sort of alone in wanting to explore that realm, which is why I ultimately continued to sort of like keep going and finding other bands and trying to find my footing somewhere, where I could be in a band that was doing bigger things. But like the rest of my bandmates, I think it was just sort of like a different mindset. We weren't on the same page, and I don't think that everybody wanted to try to go that route. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I think we never went there. You know what I mean? We did go to Europe once, which is also talked about in the movie, and we went there, and at that point, a lot of the bands I just mentioned were already famous and doing a lot of things. So that was like the only time that we reaped the benefits of the big boom of emo exploding in the early 2000s, where we showed up and people were coming up to us every night and asking questions about bands from New Jersey and Long Island. And there were hundreds of people coming up and asking for autographs or pictures. And we had never, up until that point, experienced that. So it was really weird getting off a plane and playing a show in Germany. And like having an audience singing our words back to us, because that really only happened in New York, like you said. And on occasion in other parts of the country, we might get lucky and have some people singing along. But yeah, we just were not mentally prepared for how to navigate through being a professional band. So, it never happened. But, the movie for me is a way to at least tell a story about a band who existed, kind of like Anvil in their movie, who was amongst a sea of legendary bands that we definitely put our work in and wanted our story to be heard. So it's all DIY like it was back then. And I don't know how many people. We have a cult following, I guess, but we're not like expecting like some turnaround where we're going to now sort of have the things that what we're talking about. But it feels great to at least have something out there so that anyone interested can be like, this is a band that apparently existed during that time, and maybe I'll go back and check it out.
Before we come a little bit more and delve a little bit more into the production of a documentary, a short question: are you now the only one of the members of On the Might of Princes who is earning his living through music or music related jobs?
Yes. So I never really stopped. Since the band broke up, I only had very brief moments where I kind of took a step back from music. But Tommy and I tried to play in bands together, the bassist of On the Might of Princes, and he is a wonderful human being and an incredible bass player. But I think between having a family and that's not to say you can't make a living as a musician as a family man, but he went on to be a father, and he's a teacher in a school for challenged people. And I think that he just had a different road that he wanted to go down. And I think that he still plays music. I think he has a project called King Weapon, and I know he's working on something else, but you kind of have to go out of your way to like find out what Tommy's doing, because he's not like exactly out there promoting himself. So he'll put his music out there and post about it if you can find him on social media. But you know, at least up until this point, I don't think he's really gone out of his way. And Lou actually briefly did play in a band that was sort of somewhat known, and it was called Small Arms Dealer. They put out at least one full length on Deep Elm Records, and it contained the lead singer of Iron Chic. So it was the band between Explosivo and Iron Chic with the same singer. So everyone should check that out if you haven't. And yeah, he actually had not picked up a guitar, I think he said, for 5 years, up until I called him, because I don't talk to these guys as much as I used to. I love them both, but we just have moved on quite a bit with our lives. And when I asked Lou to play these shows that we have coming up, he had revealed to me that he hadn't even touched an electric guitar in at least 5 years. So it's pretty wild. So I guess I'm the only one that really wanted to keep going. And you know, it's an addiction, I guess, for better or worse. So I'm still keeping that addiction going.
And now let's delve a little bit in the production of the documentary. First, how did you finance it?
It was financed through our crowdsourcing. So it was actually not enough money, but we it goes back to 2020, and I raised only $1,500. I don't know what I was thinking when I decided to ask for such little money. I had never made a film before, and I had an idea in my head that I could do it with Mario Quintero from Spotlights, who is an audio engineer and has a lot of skill sets when it comes to technical aspects of production. So, you know, nowadays you can use Final Cut Pro, which is what we used, which is a program that anyone can download. And, you know, it was a very DIY operation. You know, I had taken a series of questions and I sent them to members of bands and my bandmates. So, you know, some of the people in the film are members of Latterman, Iron Chic, Slingshot Dakota, Caspian,
Garrison.
and just Garrison. And they all were instructed, and this is during the pandemic, so they were using their phones. So the entire movie was made predominantly with iPhones, believe it or not. And, you know, it's not a big production, but we really did a lot to make it seem like one. And I'm hoping that people feel like it's a decent documentary. But, you know, they would film themselves answering certain questions, and then I would take my favorite parts and string it into a story, along with the commentary from my bandmates and any footage I could find of Jason in the past when he was still with us. And I just sort of gave it to Mario, and I would be like, from 2 minutes and 30 seconds to 4 minutes and 15 seconds.
Yeah.
I want Joe from Garrison talking, and then I want this flyer to show up, you know, here with this song playing. And we had kept that going basically until it seemed like there was a story told in 90 minutes. And there was a lot of things that we needed to do to make it, to edit it. And it was just the two of us with the $1,500 budget, which, you know, if you ask Mario, it was definitely at least $10,000 of work. I don't disagree with him, because we had to work on coloring and mixing and just everything. It was a huge pain in the ass, but I'm not going to lie, it was a huge pain in the ass. And I don't recommend making a documentary to anybody if you've never done it before, but it's going to be,
if you don't have enough money, right?
I mean, thank God this theater is sold out. I mean, if it was not sold out, I think that I would have been a little upset about the amount of time that we put into this, but it sold out in under 3 hours, and so that makes me feel great that people are going to be in a theater watching this. So thank God.
And how did you get all the concert, all the live footage? Did you have a lot of that on your own, like somewhere, or did people send it to you when they heard you were making a documentary?
It was a mixture of people sending it to us because I made a post on the Might of Prince's socials. If you have any live footage or photos that you have, please send them to us. And so then I took that, everything I had on YouTube that I could find, and then I took old camcorder footage and paid somebody to digitize it, and then a lot of people like physically mailed me photos that they took. Between that and a couple documentaries that we were in and a couple interviews that are online, I was able to grab from that and performances. Hate5six, who filmed tons of stuff in New York. They had something for us, and on Artigue they had something for us. So I just found all this, and then we strung it together. Thank you for everybody that did that. If you're watching,
you're already going in the direction that interests me. How did it feel when you had that kind of response? How did it feel when people sent you pictures and all that stuff? Did it approve your idea to yourself?
Yeah, it did. I think also one thing I should mention is like the only reason I even wanted to do it was because Where You Are and Where You Want to Be turned 20 in 2020. And so when it was repressed on vinyl and I saw how many records were sold, this was through Dead Broke Records, going back to Iron Chic, that's their record label, very old friends of ours. So I think that we sold like 500 in like a couple days, and then there was a second pressing of another 500, and then a third pressing of 500. Actually, there might have been more than 500. I think it was just 500 on color, and then there was like another 500 black. So every time it sold out, I think it was 1,000. So just seeing that, and then to be completely blunt with you, like to get a paycheck from that, because we didn't really collect paychecks back then. It was very sparse. I mean, if we got paid at all, sometimes that was sort of a miracle. So we just like were burning through credit card debt back then. And
you also talk about that in the documentary, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were not, again, it goes back to the saying earlier, like we didn't have a tour manager. It was me. We didn't have a manager. It was me. At one point we had a publicist through the record label, but and eventually we had a booking agent, but like none of these things were, even when we had a booking agent, it was hard to get paid. So, and we were sharing that with the agent, and it wasn't a lot of money. So, collecting a paycheck and then another one from a record that we made when I was a teenager in my parents' basement, or rather that we wrote in my parents' basement when I was a teenager. It was powerful. It was a powerful feeling. It validated something that we were doing a long time ago that I believe we were sort of way past at this point. Like, I don't think we ever had a reason to turn back and look at that chapter of our lives outside of just reminiscing with some close friends, and certainly with Jason being gone, it's not like we were going to play again, which obviously now we are with a close friend of ours that we'll get into in a little bit. But it was powerful, and I had a lot of time on my hands because of the pandemic, and I just was feeling like I've seen a lot of documentaries about tons of bands. Some of them are bands that didn't put out as many records as us. Some of them were around for a shorter period of time. And some of them I just felt like I had something in common with. I mean, the Anvil one, which I'd seen years prior to that, resonated with me greatly. I felt like there was a story that we shared in common with Anvil, but they were just sort of in the heavy metal world and way before us in time, and we were sort of in a different world of rock music. So that movie inspired me.
Would you say it's an underdog story?
Yes, it's a great. You're really nailing it here. Because the other thing that I feel is amazing about you saying that is if you look behind me, there's these sort of two posters.
Yeah.
For the one of it might have been the original On the Might of Prince's reunions, and
is one of them from Raging Bull?
No, these are actually original.
No, the one right behind you. That's a boxer, right?
Yeah, but it's an original piece of art. So
okay.
that was actually a human being that what we found who was a model, and we put makeup on his face and took photos of him, and then somebody screen printed his photo in this poster design, and we were really obsessed with Rocky growing up, and that's why
one of a few good Stallones. Yes.
Yeah, it's an underdog story, so it's a common theme through our whole history, and it's also the reason why on the front cover of Where You Are and Where You Want to Be, our friend Steve, who's African American, and Jason, who's this like tiny white guy, are running on the beach. It was sort of us poking fun at Rocky, and so and we used to come out to the Rocky theme song. So underdog, we feel like the underdogs. I still feel like the underdog with spotlights, and as a working musician, as a drummer, I feel like Julie's an underdog. So I feel like everything I do.
Well, we could discuss that one. But anyway, go on.
Well, I feel like an underdog every day, and it's something I take pride in at this point in my life, because I just don't really see I don't really see too much of like a it's either like you're famous or you're just unable to like I don't know, maybe it's a weird statement to make, but I'm just talking about my own world, where it's like a lot of the bands I grew up with are either famous or are sort of like still playing clubs and trying to make it. And so like there's a place in the middle that some bands kind of fit into, and that's how I feel like any of the notable things I've ever been a part of, I've always felt were somewhere in the middle, where it's like, I know I'm not showing up to this place and playing to nobody, but I also know that I'm not like, playing the Garden, which a lot of my friends have. So I just have this underdog spirit that I kind of feel a kinship with, whether it's other bands like Cursive or Sunny Day Real Estate, I would consider underdogs, or Anvil, who again, I was so touched by that story, and so hopefully I didn't go off on too many tangents, but it all I think relates to part of what you were asking about. Hopefully.
Last question before we talk about the upcoming events. You've been talking about the underdog, and I think we can close the circle here. Is that also part of the Long Island / Brooklyn environment that you grew up in?
1,000,000%. You are really I applaud you. I think I was just talking about this the other day. New York bands have been extremely influential to like pop culture and mainstream, and this dates back to, I think, if we're gonna kind of try to stay relevant, Quicksand, Into Another, Orange 9mm, and obviously like we
and
have,
you're not even talking about global players like in the hip-hop scene like KRS-One or the Beasties, or in hardcore like Sick of It All those New York influential bands. Yes,
absolutely. I mean, and if we were even going to go there, I mean, like, yeah, like New York has always, because to tie it back to what you said, because we're a melting pot and a breeding ground for a lot of cross-pollinating subcultures and subgenres. I think that's why the Ramones are from Queens and started punk rock, and I think that's why You know, you have bands like Agnostic Front and Cro-Mags who sort of like are instrumental in like, you know, whatever. So, you know, I was bringing up Quicksand and a lot of the post-hardcore stuff because, you know, I speak to a lot of bands. I helped put the Quicksand book that just came out together for the Slip anniversary, where I was collecting quotes from everybody from Sepultura to Anthrax to Papa Roach, you know, you name it. And my point is, there are bands all over the world influenced by Quicksand, just like there's a lot of bands around the world who are inspired by, you know, Glassjaw or Taking Back Sunday. But one thing to our detriment is that a lot of our bands hit a certain point and then like broke up. And it's happened to every band, almost every band that I just mentioned to you. And I think that part of that is also because while we are a breeding ground and a melting pot for creativity and networking, and there's so many people here to work with and opportunities to get on a label, to find a publicist, to play amazing venues, and you could get famous here, and that could make you famous around the world. You know, CBGB's is a shithole. How many bands got famous from playing at that shithole, you know? So it's like, you know, and I lived around the corner. I wouldn't even go there for a drink, you know, at the time that it was like towards the end, because it wasn't really, it was a shithole. But that shithole was a
I
breeding
still
ground
remember
for,
visiting it once in the mid-90s, and I thought like, that's a place that everybody admires?
exactly.
Okay.
It's crazy. It's really crazy. But
The toilet, my goodness.
yeah, there you go. I feel like I feel like egos is where I'm going with this. We definitely have a an element of arrogance and egotistical culture, I would say, amongst a lot of people involved with art and music, and that's not a secret. And so our egos, I think, here in New York are generally what get the best of us, and is the detriment, in my opinion, to why a lot of bands break up and don't like end up becoming the headliners at the Garden. You know, even with like Taking Back Sunday or a Glassjaw or a Brand New, you know, we Brand New broke up. You know, Taking Back Sunday still can come back
For
here.
several reasons, right? Yeah, I know what you mean.
Right.
Glassjaw,
It's
same
awkward,
thing, you know, like, yeah, but I know what you mean.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, Glassjaw plays a festival, and I've been at these festivals. You know, they're in Quicksand. They're playing side stages for a couple thousand people. Bring Me the Horizon shows up. There's 20,000 people. You know what I mean? So,
which I still
and
don't understand. Which I still don't get. But anyway,
well,
let's not go there.
I'm not dissing the band at all, but it's just to show, it's just to show the impact that I think bands from here have had, and how we generally unfortunately never make it to the point where we can kind of keep it going to the point where a lot of the bands we influenced get to. But and I feel like I said too much, and I might regret this one.
No, that's all cool. That's all cool. You didn't diss anybody. I do. I take everything on my part. Let's talk about the upcoming events.
Sure.
This week, 28th, there is the screening of the documentary at the Nighthawk. What else is going to be done around all of this?
Okay,
you've spoken about concerts, so hit us up.
Hold On to a Time is the name of the documentary. It's going to be, like you said, at Nighthawk Cinema in Williamsburg, Brooklyn on the 28th. It's completely sold out. And the next day, on the 29th, we are going to play our first show since 2012 with a new lineup, which I know is a tough sell, and I totally understand why. You know, I think there will be a little bit of pushback on this. But that being said, Rachel Rubino, the lead singer of Open City, if you haven't checked out Open City, it's a band with a new record out. They have members of Lifetime and Kid Dynamite and Paint It Black. They are phenomenal. Rachel Rubino is the lead singer of that band, and she was in a ton of bands back in the day. Bridge and Tunnel, more notably, and she went on her first tour opening for On the Might of Princes when she was in a band called Regarding Eye, who were kind of similar to On the Might of Princes. So we kind of treated them like younger siblings, and they opened up for us a lot. And Jason loved Rachel, and Rachel always was at all of our shows. In the movie, you'll see so many scenes, videos, and pictures where she's up front singing with Jason.
Seen that, yeah.
And so, and so we had asked her to sing for us, and at rehearsal, she just nailed it. You know, she has an oddly similar energy, and her vocal delivery is also similar, but also her own, in the sense where we feel like it's doing Jason justice, and also giving something to people that have probably never seen us before, because my assumption is that most of the people coming to these shows are people that never saw us, because I mean, I don't know that we have, you know, I think we just hit 600 tickets yesterday. Like, I don't know that there are 600 people that used to come see us that are coming back to see us again. So I'm guessing that's a lot of new people, but she's nailing it. And then Tom Tierney, who is also in Julie Christmas, and also was in a band called Tidal Arms, who opened up for On the Might of Princes at our very last show. He was good friends with Jason, and when Jason left us, you know, we had our last rehearsal, and he stormed out, and we had an argument. Tom was one of the first people he called, and he spent the night at his recording studio, which is where we're actually rehearsing these days. So it's kind of like eerie, and we feel his presence in there often. But Tom is playing guitar, so we've expanded the lineup. It's aesthetically, it's different. It's not one person playing guitar and singing, but Jason did a lot on stage with his guitar parts and singing at the same time, that, you know, we wanted to make it easier on whoever it was that was going to step in there. So we have Rachel just concentrating on singing and Tom playing guitar. And then lastly, we have our friend Justin Williams, who is he was in the band Gracer on Revelation Records with myself back in the day, and he'll be hopping up and playing keys on a few tracks. And the original drummer Nicole, who played on The Making of a Conversation, is gonna join us and play 2 songs. And so that is gonna happen at the Brooklyn Monarch on September 29th, and Iron Chic is playing, and Freezing Cold. And then on the 30th, we are playing our first show on Long Island since 2007. And that is with Somerset Thrower and the Backup Plan. And tickets are on sale. They're very close to being sold out. But we are super excited. I can't wait.
So for all the Long Island folks seeing this, and who might not have a chance to go and watch a show by On the Might of Princes, September 29th and September 30th is your chance to do that. I unfortunately can't be there because I'm from Europe. You know, the guys always mistake New York and Europe. They should be here, but unfortunately they ain't. But that's your chance. One thing that came to my mind while you were talking about the expanded lineup, and I'm not going to delve into the On the Might of Princes orchestra thing that you had once. If you want to know about that, folks, watch the documentary. But is it also, you've spoken about a changed lineup aesthetically? Did you ever fear that if you hired one person to play guitar and to sing, that it, from an aesthetical point of view, would look too similar to the original, or to the last lineup? Let's put it like that.
It's a really good question, but you know, before Rachel ended up stepping in, we were talking to Joe from Garrison and Fran Mark from Autumn to Ashes, who is also a very good friend of Jason's. But if we were to have any of these people sing, they were not going to play an instrument. And that was a decision that
Mhm.
I had proposed to my bandmates because like I knew, so I play guitar and I helped our guitar player Tom learn a lot of Jason's parts because I obviously was in the band, so that helped. But like I also just was always looking at his fingers, so I knew actually what he was doing, and so I just uh, knew that some of his parts were going to be weird, and they're not very orthodox. So I just kind of felt like it wouldn't
That's a
work.
bad joke about a Jew. They were not very orthodox.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I just didn't want to make it hard. I didn't want to make it harder on the person, which is already hard to get up there and sing in front of people that are like probably not exactly excited that they're watching a different person up there. You know what I mean? And so I wanted to
I
make it
know what you
easier.
mean. However, a question is anybody gonna judge you on being on stage in different lineup as the original singer slash guitar player is dead? I mean, like nobody can judge you on that, right? One
I hope.
question though, as you were talking about watching Jason play from behind. I mean, like I know that you are in your own hardcore band, and I know that you play guitar. Is there any kind of influence or anything where you're like, okay, I took that little bit because I saw him do it?
Absolutely. I mean, I was talking about this the other day. Jason, when I joined the band, made me a mixtape, and he probably made me a few over the years. But the one that stuck out to me the most, I think, was for him to kind of bring me into his world to
Mm.
understand where he was coming from. And it was the first time I ever heard Opeth was on that mixtape,
Which one?
and it was Opeth.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it was a very early Opeth record. I don't know if it was the first or second record. I think it was called Still Life, maybe. I might have to fact
Still Life
check that.
is a live album. It's not the first one, but yeah, I know what you mean. It's yeah.
Yeah, I could be wrong about the name, but it was early Opeth, and so it had Opeth on it. It had I Hate Myself on it, and it also had some acoustic music. There was a band in New York called Ida. I think that he had a song by them on there, maybe Red House Painters, but it was very like all over the place. And so between hearing him play, I was a fan when they put out their first record, and I would watch them in the audience. So I was already a fan. And then when I got that mixtape and we were playing together, he did a lot of arpeggios. I mean, On the Might of Princes had a lot of arpeggios,
Yeah.
and for non-musicians, it's sort of kind of like a classical, sort of dark classical. I don't know if it's dark, but it's definitely used a lot in classical music. And so between the arpeggios and the dissonance, which I was a huge part of On the Might, and again for non-musicians, that's sort of like notes clashing with each other.
Mhm.
You know, those things inevitably like are now in my DNA, so that when I pick up a guitar or if I want to create music, I immediately go to a lot of those different types of things that him and Lou were just always playing things of that nature around me, you know. That and just dissonance meets melody. So like, you know, weird, noisy, discordant music that sort of gets tied together into a hook or something that's actually catchy. So yeah, he had a huge influence on my music creation.
And everybody, that should also be noticed. The documentary works in two ways. First of all, it tells you the story of this band. And of course, second of all, it also tells you the story of their lead singer and guitar player and how he lived his life, and also in a way how he died. So that should also be noted. What I like, and that is also the last thing that, oh no, I have one more question before we come to the infamous Quackfire round. But what I always liked about On the Might of Princes was they were emo without being whiny. They were melodic without being too soft. And if you like, let's say, the earlier stuff of Jimmy Eat World, then you will also dig every damn On the Might of Princess song that you'll ever come across. So if you like everything up to, let's say, Clarity by Jimmy Eat World, to give one example, then you will like every On the Might of Princess song. And now my final question before we come to the infamous quickfire round, because that is also being talked about in the documentary, but it's never, ever cleared up. How the hell can we shorten the name of the band? Otmop, On the Might, what? How the hell shall we shorten it?
I prefer On the Might, you know, but a lot of people say Otmop, and that sort of plagued us from day one. So, you know, On the Might works for me. I feel like it's kind of like everyone says Trail of Dead instead of And You Will Know Us by the Trail of Dead. So another band that we all really liked a lot. So I resort to On the Might, but if people want to say Otmop, you know, hey, I can't stop you from saying it.
Okay, but folks, now you've heard it. On the Might. On the Might. Okay, Chris, nobody leaves the Veil of Sound interview without having to go through the infamous quickfire round. People who hear us for like the 100th time, sorry, that's the way it works here. Chris, you will get two alternatives, like AC versus DC, like Queens versus the Bronx, like De Niro in Taxi Driver versus De Niro in Mean Streets. And you have to make a choice. Pick one of them and explain your choice in a short answer. Let's start off with really classic New York music from the 60s and the 70s. Billy Joel versus Bruce Springsteen.
Billy Joel. Billy Joel. First song I ever played as a musician was it's really embarrassing, but it was actually We Didn't Start the Fire. So, and I don't actually like that song, but Downeastern Alexa, Piano Man. In fact, my friend's dad, John, is the guy in Piano Man that they're talking about. You can't be from Long Island and yeah. I went to college with Billy Joel.
John is the bartender in the song, right?
John the bartender is my former bandmate Ryan, the lead singer of Gracer. His stepdad, rest in peace, is John the bartender. And
who never made what he wanted to do, right? Yeah, goodness.
Yeah, but I also just like New York State of Mind is one of the greatest songs I've ever heard, and I love. There's a few Bruce Springsteen tracks that I love, but you know, Billy Joel for me, it's Billy Joel.
I mean, you're from Long Island, you got to say Billy Joel.
Gotta say Billy Joel. Come on now.
Yeah. The Beasties versus KRS-One.
God damn, man, you're making this real hard. I mean, look,
I never said it would be easy. I never said it would be easy.
KRS-One is like a master MC, and the song New York that he wrote, which is not nearly as popular as it should be, and like Jay-Z sort of kind of took the crown for writing the best New York anthem, but I think KRS is comparable as it pertains to hip hop. But I'm going to have to go with the Beasties. We are huge Beastie Boys fans. I am, you know, I grew up with every record. I mean, Check Your Head and Ill Communication, all the way up to the instrumental stuff. They were just incredible fucking musicians and great rappers and great producers. Aesthetically, I wanted to dress like them, and I did for a little bit in high school. So I have to go with the Beasties, but KRS-One, I love you. I'm sorry. I love your intro on the Sick of It All record, but I just Beasties, I have to say. I know a lot of the records front to back, most of them.
There is also one thing where KRS-One beats basically everybody, and that's the acronym. You know what it stands for, right?
God, you're going to make me look bad as a New Yorker.
No,
I don't know.
It is knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everybody.
That's fucking sick. I did not realize that. Thank you. Anyone watching that I know from New York, if you knew that and I didn't, I'm ashamed. I'm sorry.
Well, they're going to say you're from Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
You've mentioned KRS-One and Sick of It All. So Sick of It All versus the Cro-Mags.
God, you're making this really hard for me. Okay, I will answer this question this way. The Cro-Mags put out, in my opinion, the best hardcore record of all time, except for Bad Brains. self-titled, and that would be Age of Quarrel. It's probably my second favorite hardcore record of all time. Even believe it or not, above Minor Threat and Black Flag. I just love that record. But I didn't love every single Cro-Mags record. I only really liked that one and Best Wishes. Sick of It All, on the other hand, first time I saw a hardcore show without my parents was Sick of It All opening up for Helmet. I think it was 1994. It was the Scratch the Surface tour. And I have an affinity to at least 5, maybe 6 Sick of It All albums where I know all of these albums front to back. And I know them. They're friends of mine. Craig Satari taught me how to box. And I've drank beer with Armand, and I used to see Pete Collar at the gym. I have to say Sick of It All. I love Sick of It All.
Then let's go on a similar time level difference. Agnostic Front versus Madball. Who of the brothers are you going to piss off?
I love both bands, and if you can believe this, On the Mind of Princes played 2 festival shows with Madball where we actually hung out with them. They actually gave us the keys to their hotel room one night when they were, I think they were just leaving. I'm not going to get into details why, but Agnostic Front, because I love, look, I know both bands' catalogs pretty well, but like Victim in Pain is legendary. It started New York hardcore. You wouldn't have Madball or Cro-Mags, or, well, I mean, you probably have Cro-Mags, but you wouldn't have Sick of It All. And I love Liberty and Justice. I love, One Voice. I even love some of the later records. I mean, Agnostic Front is an incredibly important band to me. So Agnostic Front.
And I want to use this also to ask on your opinion on one discussion that I know Freddie and Roger had. I know that Roger always has said to Freddie, you got to know the classics. You got to know your Ramones. You got to know, let's say, Television and Blondie and whatever. You got to know that shit before you make punk rock or hardcore music. And Freddie basically always denied that. Where would you stand on that? Would you say, I lean more towards Roger's opinion or more towards Freddie's?
You're trying to get me killed?
No, I think that is something where both get you.
I think
I'm not sure about Roger.
I think it's very important to know the classics or go out of your way to do it. I don't shame anybody for not, but I think that you have to understand where it comes from. I think that it's a shame that a lot of hip hop artists that are doing like trap music don't really widely go out of their way to pay respect to the earlier pioneers. And for me, I love Turnstile. I also am old enough to the point where I've gotten to see the Ramones once before they disbanded. And I love everything in between, and the culture and the evolution of all of that, including the catalogs of bands like, Black Flag Damaged or Black Flag's My War inspired 2 different types of genres. Yeah. One was doomy, one was more punk. That, to me, I think it's important to if you go specifically, I would say, for going to wave a flag and claim to sort of be part of a culture, I think you have to understand the early parts of the culture enough to talk about it and study it. That's what I think. If you go to college and you want to be a doctor, you have to go through things to do that, or a lawyer. If you're going to represent punk rock, or if you're going to represent New York hardcore or Long Island hardcore, you need to be able to know your history. So that's how I feel.
That's a good answer and a good comparison with the doctor thing. I'll make it easy. I'll not give you 2 bands right now, but I'll stick to New York hardcore. H2O. You got 2 songs. What Happened or 5-Year Plan?
Well, I'm in the video for Family Tree. And I was a kid. I was a teenager. And if you look at the line going down towards CB's, you might see me and I might look like I'm in Turnstile, but way before Turnstile. But who I love. But no, H2O, I would say 5-Year Plan, even though the song What Happened is great because I used to go see them regularly over and over and over again. It was They were such a fun band to watch in New York. I would see I saw them one day in Queens, and then later on I think I saw them in like Manhattan or Long Island, because they do like a record store, and then they play like a club. And they were very inclusive, and they were like the first like band in New York hardcore that made you feel like you could hug your friend during the show, or like, give a high five to the guitar player. You didn't feel like you were going to get killed at the show.
Yeah, I think if you do that with some of the Sick of It All guys, your hand might be broken.
Oh man.
By the way, did you ever come across the collaboration that some of the H2O guys and the Madball guys did, Hazen Street?
Of course.
I had the pleasure of seeing that collaboration once.
I mean, I didn't see it, but I was aware of it. And Hazen Street is also by our airport. It's an actual street, and it goes to I think it's it's the street that the prison is on.
Oh, okay.
That like, yeah. I don't know if it's Rikers that where it takes you to, or where, but I was driving to the airport one day, and I passed by Hazen Street not too long ago, and I actually didn't realize that that's what it was.
Let's cut with the music for just a moment. Leche flan or halo halo? Which
Leche
Filipino
flan.
dessert do you take?
Leche flan.
Okay.
I'm good. Halo halo is a very important dessert for the Filipinos, but is a little too much going on. And the leche flan is sort of like, I can eat this cake. I'm used to eating.
I totally get that. I'm together with my wife for 12 years, and she still tries to make me love halo halo, and I'm like, no.
Not happening. Leche flan all the way. Leche flan, baby.
I don't know, as I know that are you vegetarian, or are you already vegan by now?
I've been bouncing back and forth between the two, honestly. I'm not gonna lie, it's tough.
So I'm not sure whether you would choose any of the following two, but anyway, adobo versus pancit.
Adobo. You could make a vegan or vegetarian adobo with like anything, and it's more filling. You're gonna be full. You have with a bowl of rice, you're good.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So you've had your break, and now we go back to the music questions to make you sweat a little bit. The Get Up Kids versus Jimmy Eat World.
Jimmy Eat World. You like how I did that quickly? Yeah.
No, that's okay. Texas Is the Reason versus Sam I Am.
I love Sam I Am. They changed my life. Fuck. Texas the Reason.
You got to go with a label mates, right?
Label mates, friends, small catalog, strong one. Sam I Am, larger catalog. Really love the early records, and to the mid era. Don't know the later ones as much, but both incredibly important bands. But I go with Texas the Reason.
Do you have a Sam I Am favorite album?
Yeah, I would say it was the one after Clumsy. That was the one with
You're Freaking Me Out.
Freaking Me Out. You're Freaking Me Out is it used to be Clumsy, and then it became You're Freaking Me Out. And that's usually the one I go to these days.
Mine is even one album later, Astray.
Yeah, I mean, that was when I fell off, but I like that album. I didn't get to know that one much. It was I knew everything up until You're Freaking Me Out.
Yeah, I can understand that. And now, last question, making you sweat a little bit again. Taisha versus Gospel.
You mean in terms of bands?
Yes.
The band Gospel?
Yes.
Oh, Gospel. Those guys. The Gospel are not only friends, but they're also just so original. I mean, they're a prog rock band just as much as I would call them, and I'm sorry to call it this, but a screamo band. And no one ever did it like that. They're so fucking original, and they got back together recently.
I know. And to do a little self-promotion, everybody, if you don't know about the band that we're talking about, Gospel, first of all, go to our website, read the review that somebody with a bald head wrote. And after you did that, watch the video on YouTube that we put out 12 months ago, I think, something like that. And I have to say two things about Gospel, which I love them for. First of all, they are the much better the Mars Volta, and now I'm gonna get killed for that, but I still say it, and you can fight me on it. And second of all, if you have a drummer whose email starts with a character from a Genesis record, then you fucking nailed it.
Vinny is out of control. Great drummer. And I actually booked the band's reunion show. Little funny story I'll tell you about that.
They played St. Vitus, right?
You played St. Vitus. I haven't been to any of the reunion shows, and I booked the first one, and it was sold out because I was on tour. But when Adam, the lead singer, messaged me on Facebook to ask me if I could help him book a show at St. Vitus, what we didn't realize was that 10 years prior to the day that he wrote me, I asked him if he wanted to play at St. Vitus, and he never responded. And it was the same day 10 years later. So it was kind of funny and just coincidental. So, but I've known Adam since high school, and On the Might of Princes used to hang out with him in college at SUNY Purchase, where he went, and a lot of our friends went. And I love gospel. Incredible.
Yeah. And I think really one of those very, very few bands who nail that very hard to come by combination of prog rock and hardcore. I think maybe they're the only ones to do it right, but that's just my opinion.
I agree with you. I've never heard anyone else do it like that.
And we're going to get shitstorms, both of us, for saying that. You know, the at the drive-in guys are going to be up our asses for that. Fight me. Chris, thanks for all the time. Thanks for taking the time and kicking Mario's ass to cut that thing. It's good that he's your bandmate. Otherwise, no chance. And for everybody, as soon as you get the chance to watch the documentary, Chris is thinking about how to get it online. You know, don't worry. But if you have a chance to watch that, watch it. Listen to the records. If you haven't done so yet, I would say the first one that you check out is Where You Are and Where You. Well, no, what is it? Where you? Help me. Where You Are. Where You Are and Where You. So first one that. Second of all, my opinion would be Sirens, and then work your way all through. I wish you all the best for the shows. And of course, I hope that they're going so well that you finally have to come to Europe again. And then if you as the audience like what we do here, you know, give us a subscription here on YouTube, or give us a like on Facebook or on Instagram. If you like us even a little bit more, go to our Patreon and support us there. It's very easy, and it will not cost you more than a coffee, basically. And then for you, Chris, your chance for final last words.
Well, I want to tell you, this was such a pleasure. Like, you know, your interview questions were amazing, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I just thank you for reaching out and for being patient with me. And I cannot wait to maybe play in Germany and thank you in person and shake your hand, because I love what you do with your website, and it's very important to keep the culture alive, and you're doing a great job of doing it. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. That, of course, made my day. Enjoy the rest of your day, my friend.
Thank you so much, my friend.